So tell us why you're the best person to be the Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor.
I'm a lifelong union member and a union leader. I think this is what some of us would call an outsider election. I'm not a professional politician as opposed to four of the other five candidates. Therefore, more importantly, I'm not getting any corporate money, which is limiting our efforts to actually do things better for folks. But I think, quite frankly, my opponents are trying to out-Republican Republicans, as the party's done for the last 40 to 45 years, and it's just not working. I think it's kind of funny that everyone complained about Jill Stein, but she kind of proved the point that the swing voter is to the left of the party. It's not in the middle as the narrative has been from the mainstream press.
Can you give some examples of when you're talking about out-Republicaning the Republican Party?
Well, a lot of it is just this soft language that we're for small businesses and stuff, and we want to make Virginia a place good for businesses and things like that. Well, I mean, we need to make it just as good for workers too. I mean, most people don't own businesses. There's a recent study by the CBS Money Watch that 60% of Americans can't even make basic standards. So we need to focus on those folks now instead of the business community and the billionaires and some of the people who've taken over the party.
When you were talking about being a lifelong union member,
right?
What can you give us a little more detail? Like what unions were you working with? What was your role at those unions?
I was a member of AFGE Local 12 at the U.S. Department of Labor for 30 years, and I was an officer for vice president and the executive vice president for a combined of 7 years, and I was the president of the local for 11 years. And I did a lot of litigation and arbitration, but probably the most important thing I ever did is when President Bush tried to privatize a huge bunch of jobs. And we fought it through litigation and lobbying and mobilization.
How does that experience lend itself towards the current moment that we're in?
Unfortunately, the moment hasn't changed. Donald J. Trump has gotten even further anti-worker than even George W. Bush, and I thought I would never see that. We need to focus, again, on the bottom 60%. A lot of our Democrats are complaining that, the working class abandoned us. No, we abandoned the working class first. That's why I'm on more economic policies such as universal health care at the state level, a $20 an hour minimum wage, student debt relief so people can start buying homes and starting families, and we have to repeal the right to work law so people can form unions in this state.
Why do you think the right to work law should be repealed?
Basically, it's the essence of what it is to be an American. One of our basic freedoms under the First Amendment is the right to free assembling. The right to work law is actually using the power of the government to keep people from forming unions. We've heard a lot about Citizens United. There was a case before called Buckley v. Vallejo that kind of set the framework. And it basically, if you read between the lines, it's basically saying if you don't have money, you really don't have the power of speech. So the only way working class people can do that is through a union.
A lot of different candidates are defining the role of lieutenant governor in different ways. How do you define that role, and what would you do as lieutenant governor?
So it's about going out on the road, being an advocate for the working class. I understand our gubernatorial candidate, who will win, and I'm very confident in her, does not have the same feelings I do about right to work. So I need to reach out to the labor community, and we got to organize. And in that first month of the new session in January, we've got to put the pressure not just Republicans, but on Democrats to push the right to work law, and to repeal the right to work law, of course. And I think we can do that.
Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the VPM YouTube channel, hit the bell for notifications, and visit vpm.org for more in-depth coverage.